I actually am a product of an entrepreneurial family. I come from a family business in the tile contracting industry. And one of the things I always like to say is I was reared by a traditionalist. So my father was a high school dropout, no formal education. And tile work, as we all know, is very strenuous and labor intensive. So I got firsthand experience and knowledge of what it takes to be a blue collar entrepreneur, moving from a laborer to an entrepreneur from that perspective. One of the things that stuck with me, though, during those experiences was that I do not want to work this hard. As far as the labor part of it, I was like, wow. And I saw the administrative as well. I'm like, this is some hard work. So growing up in that environment, I graduated high school early at the age of 16 and thought I was going to go off to college and have this huge corporate career. But like most teenagers at 16, I was very immature and did a lot of things that 16-year-olds do and ended up going into the military. So I went into the military, one of the best decisions. It really helped me to develop some leadership skills. I served about 4 years active duty. And when I exited the military, I did go right into corporate America, leveraging those leadership skills and leveraging what I learned in entrepreneurship from my father. And so I quickly moved up through the ranks in retail management and worked for some large names out there in corporate America. And then I said, you know what? I'm making these companies money. I want to make my own money now as an entrepreneur. So I got the entrepreneur bug, I call it, and I returned back to my roots and opened my first business in the tile contracting industry. However, I did it a bit different. I applied some of the leadership skills and was able to go out and market real quickly at a very young age in my 20s. I actually expanded the business to about 6 to 7 crews, making the most money I ever made in my life in my 20s. Did not have good money management skills at that time, however. And so 2008 happened. And I ended up closing the business during that recession period and went back into the corporate world and management very briefly. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to go under a franchise. So I then began learning franchising skills in the rent-a-car industry and also the tax business. I also was in a commercial cleaning business, and I became a serial entrepreneur at that time because I began running about 3 businesses at the same time, which was very interesting. And I added a 4th, which was consulting during that time of my life. And around about, probably 6 years ago or so, I decided to sell those companies. I closed them and I embarked on a philanthropy journey, which is working with business owners to help them be successful. So I started working with the Small Business Development Center network throughout the state of Florida. I also went into education. So today I'm a professor, so I teach entrepreneurship. I also teach business courses at a variety of colleges in the state of Florida. And I enjoy being able to share not only theoretical lessons in entrepreneurship and business, but now I'm able to share those experiential information as well, which I think the merger is extremely useful for today's business owner. So that's a little bit about my background. What I love most about consulting is the education component. As a current consultant, what I found is that it's easy to provide theoretical knowledge to entrepreneurs. However, what's most valuable to entrepreneurs is how do I put that knowledge into a practical framework that I can use right now, today. And so what I discovered is in education, education to me is all about being able to communicate something that is complex and make it very simple. I believe simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And so I really enjoy seeing the light bulb moment of entrepreneurs when I provide consulting, where they're like, wow, I didn't know that marketing was just 3 steps, so I can do this in 3 steps. I didn't realize that I can scale my business with 2 steps, and just making complexities very, very simple. is what I enjoy with consulting. And I just realized that if you're a consultant and you speak in complex language, you probably don't understand it as well as you need to. But when you can explain it to a 5-year-old, and a 5-year-old can start a business and be successful, wow, that is impactful. What actually inspires me to be a change maker is the influence of policy. And I do want to talk about that real briefly, because my metamorphosis in entrepreneurship went from being a practitioner to being a consultant to being an educator to now working to influence legislation on policy. In the entrepreneurship workforce and entrepreneurship community, there isn't a lot of policy around helping entrepreneurs to be successful. And so for me, the change making is I want to influence policy so we can give resources to our young entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurship workforce to be sustainable. Because here's the facts: 16% of our adult workforce in the United States are entrepreneurs. That's number one. 55% of adults in the United States have started a business at least once. 26% of adults in the US have started a business at least twice. However, the only federal agency that supports the voices of entrepreneurs and change in the entrepreneurship community is the SBA, Small Business Administration. And they even support empirical evidence that 90% of businesses fail. So my question is why, and how do we become part of the change to influence that number where more entrepreneurs are successful in the long term and not just an experiment for 1 year and you close? The toughest lesson I've learned has really been profit management. And I know we may touch on that today. And the reason I say profit management is because as an entrepreneur, and really as citizens in general, we don't have a problem making money. We know how to make money. We know how to generate sales of our product or our widget and make the money come into the door. However, what we lack in the beginning phases is how do we leverage our profit assets? And we should look at profit as an asset to be managed, not this thing that should be used as a reward and we spend it all. And oftentimes as an entrepreneur, we tend to spend the profits, and as a result, the business become Groundhog Day. We're starting over every year. We're starting over again, and 5 years pass, and we're like, wow, I've been toiling at this business for 5 years, but I don't have any monetary assets. So I don't have any money in the business. What is going on? Well, it's because we need to understand the education behind profit management and how do we use that to leverage business growth sustainably and weather that through recessions as well. I like to start with three, I call it the TCI method, and it's the military in me, so I assign acronyms to everything. Helps us remember, right? So with the TCI method, this is all about tracking, controlling, and investing. So the first thing we have to do is be able to track profits, have a system in place to track it. It's very easy to bring money in and spend money to pay your bills. And then we say, oh, well, whatever is left over is our profits. It's what we have left. But the thing is that it should be intentionality behind that. So for an example, if we know that our revenue goal is 100,000, our profit margin goal is 10%, well, then the other 90% is our expense target. And so what we should do as entrepreneurs is make sure that we're managing our day-to-day activities to that 10% profitability and making sure that we track it. And a lot of that tracking takes place with, understanding your P&Ls, understanding your balance sheet, understanding your cash flows and all of that. And what I found is many entrepreneurs enjoy the art of entrepreneurship, but they don't enjoy the science side of entrepreneurship. And the science side is where we make the money. So I'm like, no, you got to embrace the science. Art is the passion, but the science is the money, right? And so we really have to put those trackability tools in place to track profits intentionally. Number two would be control expenses. And I talked about the 90% left is controlling the expenses. And this is a part that many of us tend to run from. Like, oh my gosh, why do I have to be in this budget box? I want to be able to do the things I want to do. And there is a concept called the Parkinson Law. And Parkinson Law basically states that a task will always consume the space that we give it. So if we give that task and our expenses 90%, it's going to consume 90%. But what I challenge entrepreneurs to do is set a KPI of improving expenses by 2% every year. So that means let's go from 90% to 88%. What does that do to profit? It increases it, allows your businesses to grow more. So that should be a KPI, controlling expenses and controlling costs. Number three is invest in growth. Once you've established the profits, what do we do with that money? Well, we invest that money into income producing assets that produce passive income in the business without you having to constantly exchange time for money in the business. So those are the three concepts or the three paths: tracking, controlling, and investing. My recommendation would be, number one, set clear goals. The goals, you have to have, extreme clarity when it comes to what you want. I talked earlier about having a profit margin standard. And here's the thing about profit margin standards. There is no right or wrong answer. In fact, the average business make anywhere between 5 to 20% in profit margins. Yes, 10% makes above that 20% and another 10% make less than 5% profit margins. Just as an experiment, I Googled Walmart one day, and you guys can do the same. Walmart's average profit margin is 3.5%. But that's okay because they have a low margin, high volume business, right? So it works. So my point here is an entrepreneur must set clear goals for their profits and how they use it. The other is to conduct a profitability analysis. The reason that is important is because as entrepreneurs, we may want to make 20% profit margins, but the industry averages might be 10%. Not to say that we can't make 20%, but we also have to be realistic. So we want to be able to do an industry comparison on what does companies similar to this generally make. So that way we're doing an analysis to make sure that what we are thinking is really validated. The next one would be develop an action plan. An action plan or a strategy. There should always be a plan in place, and that's a whole nother topic, so I won't go into developing the actual plan itself. But a plan should be developed that controls the activities of sales and how we extrapolate that profit. The thing about sales growth is every time we grow in sales, we also grow our expenses. And we have to be careful of what I call scope creep, wherein the expenses can start beginning to become larger every time you grow in sales if you don't control it, all right, and set a strategy for it. The next one would be review and evaluate, very, very last step there. And you want to constantly evaluate if that profit margin standard is really working for your model. Because if it's not working, then we want to tweak the processes or tweak the system to make sure that it works in our favor. Or it could be that we are being unrealistic. So we want to get more intentional about the reality of what we need to be expecting. So I would say the best piece of advice for someone starting their own business would be, and I know I'm overstating this, but the best advice would be, number one, education. You want to be educated constantly. It's not a marathon. It's really a journey, and you want to continue to evolve and continue to learn as often as possible. One of the other things is set a profit margin standard for your business, and I want to give this equation for our listeners. One equation that I like to use, especially in the beginning, and it really doesn't matter if you are a novice in business or if you've been in business for 50 years, it still works. But the equation is revenue minus profit margin equals expenses. make sure that you have a revenue goal every year, have a profit margin goal every year, and have an expense target every year. And let that be the dictator of what activities have to be done to accomplish those numbers. Stick to it. So investing in strategic management and tactical management are keys to sustainability and longevity in business. My recommendation with starting a business, number one, is yes, you always want to do market research first, right? To make sure that there's viability and feasibility for your product. So I'm going to give you my opinion on it. My opinion is, if you have a business idea and you're really passionate about starting it, start it. Now, here's the thing about starting the business. You mentioned, should I have a mentor? Should I get some more education and all of those things? I believe you should do it simultaneously. In fact, when starting your business, one of the foundational platforms that I use is called the Business Model Canvas. Not sure if you heard of that before. You probably have, right? So I teach that in a very probably a non-conventional way, because I believe that, again, it shouldn't be theoretical, but each one of those boxes should be practical things that you do. So because you are aware of the Business Model Canvas, you'll know that in the very first block number 1, it talks about key partners, key relationships, right? So there are 3 teams that I recommend every entrepreneur include in their entrepreneur journey, especially when you're starting up. The first one would be an internal team, which would be your banker, your accountant, your insurance broker, your lawyer. The second one would be your external team, which would be your suppliers for whatever your business is. It could be your website, whatever it is, but your suppliers, if you choose to have employees and if you choose to work with independent contractors, these are your external team. But then we get to number 3, which is what you're talking about. This is your advisory team. Your advisory team should consist of a consultant, a mentor, and an investor. The consultant provides data, but the mentor is going to provide you experiential knowledge. An investor is going to provide you with knowledge about growth and how do you position your company and is it investable. So that's my little spiel on that. Do it simultaneously and really focus on those 3 teams while you are building external, internal, and advisory. I love the entrepreneurship community and the entrepreneurial ecosystem, because in that ecosystem, people are able to basically explore their passions, explore what they really enjoy doing. In that same vein, I always implore that entrepreneurs not focus so much on how much money they can make, but how much of an impact they can make with their skills and their ability. Oftentimes, and at least in my experiences, when I've found entrepreneurs that were solely motivated by, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be a billionaire, that's why I'm selling these pies or selling these cupcakes, they tend to quit. Or they become part of that statistic where 90% of businesses fail. But when I find entrepreneurs that say, no, I created this pie, here's how this pie is different. It is an organic pie that came from a special field out of Belgium, and this is how it is changing lives and increasing health, and I'm advocating for the health. I'm advocating that this pie is going to change lives, and that person really indulges in that and get it out to the market and get people behind it and get the community involved in it, and everybody start falling into the message and rallying. And guess what? Money starts following that value. Money starts following that passion. So I always say, start a business for reasons other than money. Let it be passion driven, let it be purpose driven, and you'll find success.